Are you looking to become a Tier 1 operator in the gaming world? Elevate your games with Black Site Studio Terrain.
Everybody, here's a quick sound test to see if people can hear me speak. Because science teacher, could I get a sound test to see how I sound? Alright, awesome. Okay everybody, today is going to be a super fast stream. I know it's Super Bowl Sunday, and so a lot of people are doing other things, but we still do have a commitment. We have a schedule, so we're going to keep it. So we try to stream every Thursday and Friday. So today music is a little loud compared to my voice. Okay, I will adjust those sound settings in short order. Thank you for that. Hopefully that's a little bit better. Okay, so I turned down the music, so hopefully you guys can hear me a little bit better. Alright, so yeah, like I said, we stream every Thursday and Sunday, so here's our Sunday stream. We did have a game lined up for today, but things come up, so instead we are going to have a design stream for our continuing 13 days to 13 hours project that we have going here on the Sitrep podcast. So again, for people who may not be familiar, 13 hours is a reference to the 2012 incident on September 11th and 12th, overnight, September 11th and 12th, 2012, in Benghazi, Libya. And so what we're going to have is a series of games here on the Sitrep podcast that recreates certain events of that night and present those events in a slightly different way. We're going to be asking some what-if questions to see if we can get a different outcome than what happened historically. So, like I said, it's going to be a series of games, mainly 3 games. One main game that's going to be done in 28mm physical miniatures. That's going to be the actual attack on the U.S. Embassy compound there in Benghazi, Libya. But when that attack started in the middle of the night, again, of September 11th and 12th, 2012, there were nearby operators that could have assisted at a nearby CIA Annex compound about 1.2 miles away or so, a little bit more than a mile away. As it is, their departure from the CIA Annex to the embassy compound was delayed by about 35-40 minutes, depending on which account you read, something like that. And as a result, things didn't, go very well for the Americans. The State Department, the CIA, the security forces that we had at the embassy compound. So, part of what we're doing is we're going to postulate what if those private military contractors, or those, I think they were attached to the CIA, once they call them the GRS, if those GRS operators have been able to leave right away, and get into, if they had gotten to the danger zone, much sooner, could they have made a difference? To sort of answer that question in our own wargame related way, or at least come up with some possible answers. Obviously, we'll never know what really would have happened. But to come up with some possible answers, we're going to have what we call a transit game. So we're going to have a rough layout of that part of Benghazi. We're going to have a location of the CIA Annex. That's going to be our starting point, and we're going to have our the location of the embassy compound that's under attack, and we're going to have a larger scale game. Again, our map board is going to be about 1.5 miles wide. Obviously, this is going to be a tabletop game, not a miniatures game. And that's part 1 of our war game series that we were talking about a second ago. So part 1 is going to be a transit game handled here in on a virtual tabletop. I've been building the pieces for that. Now I'm going to start to build pieces that go on the actual map table that we're going to build custom for this project. So that's game one. We're going to see how well the GRS operators, with the vehicles and the weapons that we think they had that night, can get from the CIA Annex to the embassy compound. And then depending on the results of that game, that's going to affect the win conditions and the starting conditions of the main tabletop game. That's the actual attack on the compound. And then depending on how that game turns out, we're going to have a return to the CIA Annex game where the GRS operators, or those that have, that are still operational, those that are still, either alive or not wounded or, non-casualties, with hopefully the U.S. The ambassador, hopefully some of his staff, and if we can get them back to the CIA Annex building, to the relative safety of the CIA Annex building. Of course, historically, there was done a much larger assault on the CIA Annex building. We might cover that in a future part of the series, but for now, it's just those three parts. Getting the GRS operators from the CIA Annex to the embassy compound, stage one. Stage two is the actual miniatures game at the compound, and then stage three is trying to get them back. It's pretty much the transit game in reverse, trying to get those guys back to the CIA Annex. So, if you're following us on Tabletop, on Facebook, on our other platforms, you've been following us here on Twitch, on some of our hobby streams, some of our design streams, we've been painting physical miniatures for the tabletop game, or I should say for the miniatures game, and we've been building virtual miniatures and game pieces for our tabletop games, and again, the project continues. So, here we go. So, we have, what I've built here is sort of a, actually no, because Science Sitrep was not a coincidence. Some of the people involved in that attack picked that date on purpose, obviously. But anyway, what we've got here, or what I've tried to build here, is something of a building factory, or a portfolio of components with which I can build a whole bunch of Middle East or North African types buildings in relative short order. Now, Benghazi is a North African city. It's a Middle Eastern city. However, it was in the middle of the city. It was not like out in the middle of the, Lawrence of Arabia kind of desert. So we don't want our buildings to look too prototypical as far as, the mud brick, the Afghan-style buildings or whatever. This is 2012, and this is in a city. However, the city has gone through a bit of a civil war lately. There's a lot of damaged buildings, so there's going to be a certain amount of rubble in the streets. Of course, this is in the aftermath of the Arab Spring and the Libyan Civil War. It's a country in strife at the moment. There's multiple militias running around. We're going to cover all that in the transit game, but for now we're just trying to build some buildings. Obviously, to build a bunch of buildings, I want to build like maybe 20 buildings. We probably won't build 20 today, but I want to build, a big, nice library of buildings that when I go to build the main file for the wargame table, I could actually just slap a bunch of buildings on there, arrange them how I want, save it, and then, we'll go from there. What's going on, Mr. Gaz? How you doing? Welcome to our anti-Super Bowl party. Yeah, things here in the States are crazy because it's the Super Bowl, the big football game, so I'm not anticipating much of an audience today, but that's okay. We're here to keep the schedule, and all things will be fine. So, Gaz, I'm not sure what you were, when you joined us or whatever, but like I was saying for a second ago, we're just going to be building some buildings. We're going to be creating a whole bunch of buildings with this little library of template pieces that I've sort of got ready here, and we're going to go ahead and build a bunch of buildings that we can put on the transit map. So over here is my layer menu, where I've got a lot of this stuff already pre-built, and I'm hoping that I can just assemble a bunch of buildings in relatively short order. So I've got different kinds of roofs here that I can use. I've got different kinds of tile if I want to have like a little courtyard. outside of some of these buildings. I've got some rugs, I've got some debris, I've got some stuff that gets stacked outside of buildings. We've got the little marketplace kind of a tent. I've got some barrels, some scrap iron, or I should say scrap aluminum for roofs, some grating, some air conditioning units that go on the roof of the buildings, different kinds of debris, different kinds of roofs, or roofs, if that's the right word. Okay, and these are all, manageable. I can, spin them around in different directions, stack up the layers in different orders, and, pretty much build them how I want. One thing I forgot to build is a landing to my staircase. Look at that. So here's my staircase that goes up the side of the building and it goes to nowhere. That's not gonna work. So super fast. I want to build I meant to do this before the stream, I will admit, but no one's perfect. Okay, let's build a quick little landing that our staircase actually goes to. Should have done that already. Okay, so some very basic wood, or like brownish kind of a wood color here. Let's see, maybe we can add some, like a wooden pattern to that, an overlay pattern. So layers, layer style. I don't have the greatest collection of patterns, I will confess, but... Alright, so there's some pattern on the wood. It's not that great. It's a little too stark. So I'm going to reduce its opacity quite a bit. And leave its scale the way it is. Its scale was fine. So does that always go sideways like that, no matter what I do? No, it does. Okay. False alarm. Okay, so super fast, there is a very generic kind of a wooden landing that this staircase is actually going to go to. I think the landing should go a little bit underneath the staircase. I know that sounds weird, but it's going to look a little bit better if I do that. Okay, that looks a little generic, so let's try to clean it up a little bit. Knock down the saturation of that wood layer, because I think that was a little intense. Okay, and these kind of, like when we're building terrain or when we're building tables, on a physical table, we just kind of sort of think in the same mindset. These landings that are at the top of a staircase usually don't just end. They usually end in either a door or they have some sort of a railing. They're not just a plank of plywood up there, 12 feet in the air. Even in the most primitive of buildings, they have some kind of something. So some kind of additional structure. So to make this super fast, because again, I sort of wanted to do this before the stream. At the same time, I don't want to spend too much time on this because this isn't that important of a thing. I would like the grain of the wood. I don't know if this is coming through on the stream, guys, but this pattern here in this wood has a certain bit of a grain to it. The grain is kind of going against it's kind of going the wrong way for my long, thin piece of wood here. So what I'm going to do is, now that that pattern overlay is on there, I'm going to convert it to a smart object and then rasterize my smart object so that now, no matter which way I rotate my 2x4 here, so to speak, the grain of the wood is going the right way. So you'll notice that the grain of the wood is now going perpendicular to the grain. It's going vertically as opposed to horizontally like it is here in the landing. So I'm going going to set this to a more precise 90 degrees. And it's like, oh my god, I can't see it. Well, what we're going to do is we are going to add a quick drop shadow. I already have some drop shadows created for my other layers I have in this template. So I will just copy that layer style from one of my other pieces that I was talking about. Select the 2x4 that you can barely see right now. Paste the layer to that. And that's a little intense. The drop shadow is a touch much for what's basically like a 2x4. Thanks very much for stopping by, guys. I was, yeah, it's going against the grain, that's right. I was afraid I was going to have actually any audience today. Hello, Skoback, thank you, welcome to the stream. Okay, Skoback, the music is still too loud. I will Chiefs versus 49ers. You know what, guys, I was actually proud of the fact that I did not even know who was in the Super Bowl, and you've taken that away from me. Thanks very much for that. Okay, Skoback, I will turn down the music a little bit more. And move the mic a little bit closer. Okay, so hopefully, well, we know now because Gaz told us, so he took that freedom away from us. Thank you, Gaz. I am just kidding, right? Cool. So, yeah, hopefully now that's going to look a little bit... I know this looks very pixelated right now. Again, we're super zoomed in. I'm going to go ahead and create another 2x4, and we're literally going to build a building. We're going to create more wood, and continue to just create more, you know, railings on the side of our little landing here. Duplicate the layer. Get that to 90%. Yeah, I'm not surprised that our viewers today are from Canada and the UK. I am not surprised at all. Grateful, but not surprised. And if we wanted to get super serious. Let me think about it. Create a new layer. No, new layer, dummy. Kind of rough with this, but again, I'm not really Alright, let's see if this worked. Oof, that is way too much. Come on. All right, there is our little railing / balcony area that kind of sits over top of our landing that leads up from our staircase. And I've just lost my layers. Oh no. Hold on. View. Window. Stop taking away my layers. Hello, D3R Pabst, if I'm saying that right. Welcome to the stream. And like I said, our, what was I calling it? Our anti-Super Bowl party. Our official Super Bowl protest party. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. Before, those two 2x4s were sort of overlapping and it was looking a little strange. Cue the orchestra score. Oh, I am an Englishman, right? We're gonna do the HMS Pinafore now. Is that from the play that's from, or am I getting that wrong? Roll wits plus culture. Epic failure. Okay, so that's a lot of layers there in that stupid little thing. So I'm going to go ahead and combine some of those layers just to make this a little bit easier to deal with later. This does take away some of my flexibility later, but I don't think I'm going to need that much flexibility for what's effectively just, you know, a stupid balcony, or not a balcony, like a stair landing. So convert layer, no, not to convert layers, merge the layers, boom, cool, that's it for that. Okay, so again, I was sort of kind of creating this this building as a template for my template, so this building is pretty much done. We're going to add a lot more variation to this stuff. We got different kinds of roofs we can add in here. I've got two different colors, steel or aluminum roofs, metal roofs, whatever. I have different kinds of alley trash. I have stuff that gets piled up outside the alley. I've got a dumpster. I've got stuff that goes on the roof. There's tons of different things, and of course we're going to draw all these buildings in different shapes. But for now, this first building is pretty much done. So, notice this black, or I should say gray, this gray and white checkerboard sort of pattern. That just means that that is transparent and not white. So I'm going to crop this down. Oh no, where did everything go? Don't worry. Save as, and this is going to be my Benghazi buildings folder, and I'm just going to add Benghazi building number 1. Make sure I save it as a JPEG. JPEG is a transparent background format. So that is the first of many. Now, with most of the hard work done, hopefully just to build, like almost manufacture a whole bunch of more buildings should be pretty easy. Control-Alt-Z brings back, you know, what I just had a second ago. And okay, so our first building is done. It should now be sitting there waiting for us. Let me change the view so I can show it off. Oh no! Yeah, it's there waiting for us. We'll be able to just drop that onto a master sheet somewhere, and that's our first building. I'm going to fill up this whole page full of more different variations of buildings, different shapes, different colors, different sizes. And then when I go to build my actual map file, I'll be able to just open up all these pre-made Benghazi building templates, throw them on there, and literally build a city with, you know, as fast as it takes to, you know, click a button on a mouse. At least that's the idea. We're gonna see how successful I am. Are the buildings planned for the way to Annex A? Yeah, so like I was saying a second ago, might have been before you were on the stream. This is going to be for the transit game that tracks our GRS operators in their efforts to get from the CIA Annex to the Ambassador building. Historically, they were somewhat delayed. We are going to postulate what might have happened. Of course, it's just a game, so we'll never really know. But we are going to postulate what might have happened if they were not delayed. If they were able to leave pretty much, you know, when they wanted to right off the bat. Historically, I think they were delayed something like 35 or 40 minutes. We're going to see what happens if they left right away. The outcome of that game is going to, that's going to be a tabletop game that obviously we're making the virtual tabletop pieces for here. The outcome of that game is going to affect the starting conditions and the win scenario for the main tabletop game that's being done in 28mm up in the Midwest. So Gianna, Marnie, and some of the other friends up there are putting that physical game together over the coming weeks. And then we'll have this game play out. That's going to affect how that second game starts. Obviously, the better the GRS do in the transit game, the better their situation is going to be for them at the actual embassy compound. And then after, depending on how they do with the embassy compound, there might be a transit game to come back to the CIA Annex. Where historically there was yet another battle, a fourth phase, which we're not going to do at first, but we may come back to it later. Okay, so first of all, we are going to build another building. So this was our first building. Let's go ahead and try to build a second building super fast. So the first thing I want is that wall layer. So I've got the wall layer here in my Photoshop. I'll move this over so a little bit easier so you guys can see it a little bit better. It's got the shadow overlay. It's got the drop shadow, which you can already see there. That's a little bit of drop shadow on the edge. And the pattern overlay is like that rock texture. So I don't draw that by hand. I mean, Christ, I'll be here till Christmas if I do that. So I'm going to pick a different brush. And that's how we build our walls. Notice that it comes with that layer already built, and it's even coming with that drop shadow that's already built, because then we're just adding it to that pre-existing layer. These walls are a little chunky right now, so I'm going to go ahead and cut that down a little bit. Now it's a little bit too small. What's the magic number? That's a little bit bigger. Let's try 12. That's pretty good. Okay, let's get rid of all this scrap. And let's build a building. Make sure I'm still on the same layer. So with the ruler tool, I'm able to put this blue line, which is probably barely visible on your Twitch stream. But what this allows me to do is that it basically allows me to draw a much cleaner straight line. Like this would be really difficult to do with a Wacom pad, which is actually functioning correctly today, I'm happy to say. Oops. Got a little too aggressive there with that one. I'm just trying to get a little inventive here with some of these angles. Transit game in 6mm. Is that how you're going to do it? Are you running a similar project like this? The distance between the two buildings is 1.2 miles as the crow flies. So to do that in 6mm would not be impossible. But you'd still need a pretty big board. 6mm is usually considered roughly 1 to 144 or 1 to 150. So let me think here. 5,280, we'll say 1 mile divided by 144. Your table is still 40 feet long. That would be tough, but not undoable by any means. The table would look amazing, I know that. Wait, that's 10mm. I'm sorry. I got that totally wrong. 6mm is like what? 1 to 286, 1 to 300. Thank you. Sorry. I was thinking of 10mm. 5,280 divided by 300. Not quite 20 feet. That would be an amazing table. If you set that table up, let us know. Take some pictures. Unfortunately, I'm down here in South Florida, and the rest of the team, well, some of the team is in Great Britain now. Hello, Mr. Gaz. But a big part of the team is up in Chicago, and even if I were to build a 17-foot table, to move that up to Chicago would be tough. So I'm using these blue lines to pretty much set myself up a little framework, and then I just draw it super fast with my layered, what's the word I'm looking for, not layered, my pre-textured stone walls. Get the whole wall a roughly uniform thickness. Cool, let's throw in some doors. I don't think doors are going to be a feature of this game. So obviously when you're designing pieces like this or terrain like this, you have to think not only you know what it looks like. I mean, it has to look good, but then also like game function. But just in case, I'll put, oops, it's the wrong thing. I'll throw in some doors. All right, next we go to this layer. Again, this layer's been set up, so all I gotta do is I can go ahead and get a little bit more aggressive with the size of my layer. Oh, one thing I will do now is set it to a normal brush pattern, so no more of that two-tone stuff. And we will fill in our wall. Notice that the that sandy texture is coming with it. Also notice that because of the way I have the layers ordered in my Photoshop, the roof is underneath the wall. This is to sort of simulate that construction that we see in a lot of these kind of buildings where there's a low stone wall around the outside of the roof that stands slightly up, sometimes 3 feet, sometimes 2 feet, sometimes more. One thing that does for gaming purposes obviously is it makes almost any game, or makes almost any table a ready-made fortress. Guys can, or shooters can be up on the roof of a building, elevated position, extended lines of fire, extended lines of sight, and they come with some degree of pre-made cover. They have these stone walls that come up, again, 2, 3, sometimes more feet, to give them at least partial cover. So there's our basic building, super fast. That was easy. Now we're going to go ahead and add some details. Again, all we're going to do, this is the kind of tedious part of the project, is just keep adding more and more of these little details in different configurations so the buildings all look at least a little bit different. Until we have a library of about 10, maybe 20 of them. Stick them all together and presto pow, we have a map. Of course, then I have to build streets and, you know, put in some vehicles, but this, you know, does a lot of the heavy lifting up front. Why won't this let me select? What are you doing, machine? There we go. Staircase looks a little crooked. So I'm trying to fix that. Alright. These are little pieces of debris that we did not use earlier. Some of them we did use. Even the ones we did use, we're going to put in different places. Just to to make the building look a little more real. Maybe we'll add some more decorative grate. A prayer reg, because why not? Maybe he's got some debris on the roof. Ooh, if we want to put it on the roof, we're going to have to move this up. So I'll duplicate the layer and move it up so that it's on top of the roof. And that allows me to kind of, you know, I don't know, stick some... He's got some auxiliary storage, we'll say, up there on the roof someplace. I don't want to use everything because, again, I use a lot of this in previous buildings, and if you get too repetitive with the pieces of debris that you're not debris, the construction elements that you use time and time again, your buildings are going to look a little tired eventually, you know. So, you know, to put it another way, sometimes less is more. So, that was another building, super fast. Let's go ahead and clip around that. You always got to give yourself a little bit of room when you're doing these clips. Notice that I'm not doing it like right along the edge of the building because like it's hard to see right now. There is a drop shadow, and if you clip that drop shadow too sharply, it's going to look really weird when you put it actually over top of something else that you can actually see. So, long story short, just leave yourself some elbow room when I'm doing these clips. Or crops, I should say. So I'm going to go ahead and crop that. Never save it. Save as, because we're going to save this as a different file. Again, always as a PNG. And that's going to be Benghazi building number 2. When was the last time you saw somebody build a building that fast? Because we're going to build another one. Yay! This one might be even faster. Yes, this one's going to be even faster because I'm not going to really use this roof piece at all. I'm going to go ahead and hide that for now. We'll come back to that. Move these other pieces aside. Save as a JPEG. No, do not save as a JPEG. Save as a PNG. The reason you want to save as a PNG is because you want it to have a... unless you're just kidding around with me. You want to have it as a transparent background. So what these files are eventually going to be used for is, again, there's going to be a map that's going to have like streets and actual terrain on it or whatever, and I'm just going to grab all these buildings, I'm going to throw them on there all at once, and that's going to basically create almost an instant city. Assuming that I, am successful and I don't go crazy trying to build too many of these buildings. So for this building, I'm just going to try something super fast and a little different because I don't want all my buildings to look too much. I don't want them to look too samey. So I'm going to use some of these other elements here. Yeah, old guys was just playing around with me there. Making sure I'm paying attention. He's keeping me on my toes. I appreciate that. So Gaz has been doing a lot of our miniature work. Again, for the physical game. I guess he's painting them. I guess you're going to send them over in the post. For them to use in the Northeast, or not the Northeast, the Midwest. was watching some of his streams where he's painting some of his Libyan militia that we're going to use for this project. Okay, I'm trying to have a conversation and think to myself at the same time here. Okay, so I'm in the walls. I want to build walls, but these walls are not going to have a roof. That's going to be the roof, and then what's going to be around this roof is going to be a courtyard. So give me just a couple seconds here. Yeah, well packaged. Yeah, cool. So yeah, I was watching some of his streams the other day, a couple weeks ago, and he was painting some of these guys, and some of these guys had like these garish like blue flip-flops. So needless to say, when we were doing our virtual figures now, we started to add blue flip-flops and some other gear. Jen was suggesting all this, very bizarre color schemes, which, believe it or not, they're not as outlandish as it would sound. From what we can, or at least from what I've read, what we see in the movie, which, again, I shudder to think that I'm using a Michael Bay movie as a source of truth. Every time I say that, I feel like I have to take a shower. A lot of these militia that were running around the streets that day, whether they were friendly, hostile, or otherwise, were not exactly dressed in what we normally think of in, Middle East insurgents or whatever. A lot of them were wearing some pretty bizarre clothing. Apparently there was a soccer game going on that night, so a lot of them are wearing FC shirts or whatever. Is that the right term? I'm a filthy American. I don't know. I actually call football soccer because that's what it is. So you're gonna have to forgive me for that, guys. I'm sorry. Always get history for movies. Yeah, that's me. You know me so well. If it's in a movie, it must be right. That's a risk in a nutshell. Okay, so whereas before this wall was going to be like the outside of the building, here this shingle part is going to be the building. So I'm not really going to need this stuff on this kind of building here. And then what I'm going to have inside this is a courtyard. And to distinguish the courtyard from a rooftop, I'm going to use a different pattern here. So let's hope I have the right color selected. Please, is it close enough? That is close enough. So these are all different. Oh wait, I'm sorry. I have to go back to my other brush type. There we go. So again, these are all different layers, and the layers can have, if you want, established or pre-designated patterns. So that's like this. I mean, I know it looks like shingles, but I'm trying to pretend that it's sort of like a cobblestone. I might change the layer outline later, but for now it's fine. And it obviously saves me a lot of work that I don't have to go in here and draw all those lines by hand, because that would be insane. And to sort of help show that this is an indoor thing, move to the bottom of my actual image, and now I can move in some things like this dumpster. Although, quick reality check. If this is a dumpster that gets picked up by a garbage truck, how does a garbage truck get in this courtyard? There's no egress, whatever. Little things that sometimes you see in gaming maps or even terrain pieces that people forget. My favorite in sci-fi is the hangar that has like a big spaceship in it or something, or a big fighter plane, a starfighter or some kind. But the doors for the hangar are never quite big enough for the plane to ever leave the hangar. Apparently the plane was built there and it's stuck there forever. Kind of strange. and so I am trying to not make similar mistakes here in my terrain pieces. Not that that's the kind of thing that people would notice in a game table, but just in case they would, I don't want to, make that kind of mistake. So that doesn't look right, obviously, right now. We can fix that in a second. So now it looks like there's a little bit of trash piled up there in this little courtyard type thing. Anything else we want to add here? Is there still room for this? I feel like I should start like a YouTube playlist or something, where it's like, Jim makes terrain the cheap and easy way. A building like this might take somebody a couple days to put together and paint and prepare for a gaming table to its, proper extent. Here we can do it in about, what was that, 7 or 8 minutes? Okay, so cool. Let's go ahead and crop this. That's not going to work. Alright, that's 3 buildings. Again, this is going to be a short stream, guys, so I'm not going to be on here all day. 1.1 kilometers for the route. It's not that far. I thought it was miles. Okay, I'll check my sources again. North African Granny Annex. Oh, God. Or a Detroit supermarket, if we want to get really nasty. Do we want to make any more, I should probably be quiet before I say something that someone's not going to appreciate. Homeless shelter, nursing home. It's funny, but yet not really, kind of thing. I will check my sources, because, again, I haven't started drawing the main map yet, but if it's only 1.1 kilometers instead of 1.2 miles, is that as the crow flies, or was that the route that they took? The smaller the map, it's actually, I mean, I'm not trying to, challenge your source or anything. In fact, if anything, that would be good news. Just for, me personally, the smaller the area, the shorter the distance, the easier it will be for me to draw a nice map for it. So that would actually be good news for me. Okay, I want to build some buildings super fast with these metal roofs. So I gotta figure out how I want to do that real fast. We had a game of Darkstar yesterday between Drew and Shanghai. he had a little bit of extra time off because of the virus that's going around out there. Apparently they've extended the Chinese New Year holiday. They're asking people to stay home from work because, you know, things are kind of up in the air over there. So, you know, to make lemonade out of lemons, so to speak, we got a good game of Darkstar in. We also had Rasmus from the Midwest. So we were truly a global game community yesterday. I was like a referee, so I had one ship on each side of that battle. One of my ships got a broadside right across one of Drew's destroyer's sterns, which is, you know, really a bad thing for that target destroyer. Threw a bunch of plasma projectors and railguns into his reactors and engines, blew up the ship, and blew it up so hard. Meanwhile, Rasmus's ship was directly on the other side of that ship. It had had its port quarter torn open by the forward guns of that destroyer I just exploded. So there's no shields, there's no engines, and then the blast wave from that explosion hits Rasmus's ship, who's on my team. So I fired my guns into the back of Drew's ship, blew it up, and the shockwave knocked out one of Rasmus's ships, which was actually a friendly. So with one burst of fire, I destroyed two ships. One of them was on my side. But sometimes that kind of thing happens in Darkstar. Especially when players like to get that up close and personal with their warships. It's like, guys, you don't always have to get that close. Okay, so as I'm building these buildings, I realize that a lot of them are kind of coming out roughly the same in like this general kind of an L shape here. I'm not too worried about that because, again, once they get put on the map, they can get rotated and reversed and flipped around and, you know, all kinds of different things. So they won't look quite that bad. In fact, just right now, it makes things a little bit easier as far as the the mass producibility of the ship, the mass producibility of the buildings goes. Shortest route on Google Maps. Okay, and if they didn't do a lot of deconstruction, there isn't much build around. Okay, I got you. Cool. Yeah, I'm not gonna try and build that many buildings. Again, 1.1 kilometers, 1.2 miles. You know, that's a lot of terrain. If I try to cover it completely with buildings like Mogadishu style, we're gonna need like a million buildings, and you know, we're never gonna get done. Also, it's going to kind of screw the game up if I, you know, clog up the map with too many buildings. I don't want to make it too easy. I don't want to make it too hard. Am I screwing something up here? Yes, my wall was coming out a slightly different color. No worries. One thing I do want to build into that transit game, just from as a designer perspective, is the choice of different routes. So, I mean, we can kind of look up the route that we think they took, and a lot of that stuff is still classified and redacted. From what I understand, and Gads can correct me if I'm wrong here, we don't even know for sure what weapons these guys were carrying. A lot of that stuff has been pulled out of the official State Department report. We know what they were carrying in the movie, which again is why we're kind of stuck using the damn movie as a source of truth in some places. Alright, I'm going to duplicate my wall, not my walls, sorry, wrong layer here. I'm going to duplicate my roof layer. And then I'm going to re-hide the original. So basically, I just made a copy of the roof layer, and now I'm gonna, mess around with it with this new roof layer, because I don't want to make a roof out of this. What I want to make is like an asphalt kind of a thing. So I want to turn this sandstone roof kind of a thing into more of like a blacktop or an asphalt kind of a layer, because I'm trying to build like a little miniature parking lot in here. So I don't want to screw up my roof layer, because I'm going to use that in like 10 more buildings at least. So I made a copy of it and re-hid the original, stored in a cool, dry place, so to speak. And now I'm going to have my copy that I'm going to go ahead and experiment with. This should be pretty easy if I just desaturate it. Will that work? Good enough. It looks a little like blacktop, a little too light. It's more like concrete, maybe. Notice I am using the brightness slider here, not the lightness. In Photoshop, brightness and lightness are two very different things. And in this case, I want to retain as much of the highlights as possible. I'm trying, because what creates that texture is the difference between shadow and light, is what makes that blacktop not just look like a gray sheet of paper. So I'm not, what's the word? If I just reduce its darkness, it would have reduced its lightness as opposed to its brightness. Let me try to put it a different way that's less convoluted. Brightness, at least for me, tends to retain that contrast between light and dark a little bit better. Whereas if you just increase or decrease the lightness, it makes the whole thing lighter or darker, and you actually lose a lot of that distinction. It's just a different tool. Sometimes you want the latter, sometimes you want the former. Now, one thing that I do have a little bit of a problem with here is I don't have this new color saved on my palette. I don't want to get rid of these colors because I'm using them for walls consistently. So I'm going to cheat with the smudge tool. And I'm literally just going to barf myself some more pavement by smudging out the pixels that I already have here on my worksheet, or here in my document. Again, anywhere there's pixels on this layer, the machine is going to automatically pull that layer pattern with it. So I still get that, even though I'm being very gross, so to speak. I mean, with my how I'm putting the pixels down, the machine is applying that new, or the original overlay pattern onto those new pixels in a uniform manner. So, long story short, it comes out looking okay, and I don't have to screw up my pre-existing colors or whatever. If this was a more serious document, I would have, like, okay, these RGB codes written down somewhere, or I would have them in the names of the layers, so records or whatever, so I could, go back to them. But again, I'm just trying to build some super. The whole point of this process is to, make this quick and easy and fast. Meanwhile, out here we have more of a pedestrian courtyard. So we want that to be a different color and a different... Oh, no, the wrong brush was selected. Again, I keep making that mistake. Okay, now I'm confused. What are you doing? There we go. Took the long way on the main road. Exactly. That is exactly what I'm trying to put in there. So you can, what I want to build into this game is the choice between I'm going to have two different kinds of roads, pretty much good roads and bad roads. and the movement rates and the difficulty for a certain number of certain amount of distance driven per turn. It's going to be 1 minute per turn. I think historically they took 7 minutes to get there once they finally got moving. So 7 turns is going to be the median average, is what we're going to be aiming at on this particular thing. However, I do want to give them the option of taking the shorter, faster route that is more difficult. Again, what we're looking for here, the whole point of this project is different outcomes and replayability value. So, again, that is absolutely one of the things I am thinking about as far as game design. Sorry guys, I'm having a conversation and fighting with Photoshop at the same time, so sometimes my conversation is a little stilted. Okay, now that we have a leave that out. Put some more trash in here. This building actually has some air conditioner. Why would the air conditioner be right over here? Because that's where the truck pulls in. That's not where you would put the air conditioner. Let's put it over here in this layer here. Actually, let's see. Here's the pedestrian entrance, so here's where the customer is set. That's where you want your air conditioning. Does it really matter? No. Do you really think about this when you're putting terrain on a table? Not really. But I guarantee that people like Blacksite Studios, you know, the people that make this kind of terrain, they do think about stuff like this. It's kind of their job to. They think about it so you don't have to. Come on, let go of the layer. Oh my god, what are you doing? It's just tiny little things that, even if you don't notice it, how does the expression go? You may not have noticed it, but your brain did. Yeah, when you set up a table like that, something about that castle just looks weird. I don't know, I don't like it, I'm not going to buy it, or I don't want to use it on my table. Or, you know, this building, or this, you know, a beach fortification if you're playing, like, you know, in D-Day, or, you know, who knows what. This is more of a modern structure, so we'll leave that off of there. I want to put something on the side here. Little piece of the roof from when they were building this place. It's little things like that that I think, you know, people really do notice, or even if they don't notice it, you know, it just won't look right on your table, and you may not even know why, but for some reason you won't like it, you won't build it, you won't buy it, you won't use it on your table. These are the kind of things that, I mean, not that I consider myself a terrain designer, but the people who actually do design terrain or whatever, they have to look out for. You have to make sure that the terrain makes sense on, I don't want to say a subconscious level, but sort of. Okay, so there's our little, you know, our little garbage yard or whatever, so trucks can come in here, they can go into this whatever kind of shack this is. Maybe it's an automotive shop, maybe it's a little miniature factory, who knows what it is. But they can come in here. You know what I should put in here? Hold on guys, hold on. There should be some sort of a gate that slides across this. Or that opens out, like where trucks can come in or come out. Problem is I don't have any piece for that. can I fake it? It's a little too, that's a little too subtle. So what I'll do is, one quick way you can always reduce the subtlety of an image in Photoshop is to add a stroke to it. So super fast, I'm gonna go ahead and throw in, once I can find a layer menu, layer style, stroke, and a stroke is basically an outline. Now that's really garish, but you know, we don't have to use that. We can reduce the gray that it uses. And then we can reduce its thickness. Yeah, keep it at, no, 3 is definitely too much. Keep it at 2 for now. And reduce its opacity. Which I don't really want to do because I've already reduced its blackness. They took the long way on the way. Yeah, okay, they took the long way on the way home. Clean coast to shot glass. Yes, it's in the report. Surprisingly, they came out and turned left. I imagine they approached left. Yeah, I think I saw that in the map. It's like 3 left turns. That's the main road that I'm going to draw in the map. But I'm also going to include, guys, other routes that will be shorter, but probably more difficult. And the way I'm gonna create that in the game is there's going to be what's the word? 2 classes of roads, and the roads are going to have different. I'm putting a little bit of texture here on this gate. 2 classes of roads that are easy and roads that are hard. So the roads that will be hard, your movement rate's going to be slower, and it's more chance to run across enemy, or I should say hostile militias. Obviously, the militia situation is going to be extremely fluid. This is sort of the reason I took on the project. Because, I mean, obviously, you know, G and Marty and the guys up there in Chicago are doing the main, you know, the game. I'm just doing like this little support game. And the real reason that we're doing that, or the reason I kind of was interested in that, was this idea of a flexible and nebulous malicious status or whatever. I mean, I played with mobs before, that's easy enough, but here you've got militia that are actively changing sides in the middle of the battle. You've got guys that are hostile, the way I'm going to build it in the game, guys that are hostile, guys that are ambivalent, and then guys that are friendly, like the 17 February guys. And they're going to be able to change in the middle of the game. So I actually kind of feel bad, guys, if you're listening. Whoever's going to wind up playing the Libyans, it's almost going to be like you're not really in control of your force to a certain extent. Because, I mean, let's face it, if you are a militia commander, I use that word sparingly, or I should say loosely, are you really in command of your force on a tactical level? Do you picture those guys sitting in a bunker somewhere with a TACCOM radio, you know, River Bravo 2, you know, move forward to phase line Yankee? You know, that's not how it goes. They yell Allahu Akbar once, and the battle starts, and then they just kind of see what happens. Operationally, I'm sure they plan. They sit in a bunker, they sit in a cave, and they say, okay, the Americans are here, the British are here, we're going to put an IED here, we're going to try and assassinate this reporter, this militia guy is friendly to us, this guy can be coerced. I'm sure their planning is very intricate. But once the battle starts, there's going to be not a lot of planning on the militia side. And the part of that's going to be reflected in that there's not going to be a lot of control. or at least partial control. Obviously, we're assuming Gas is going to play the Libyan militia once, the Libyan hostile militia, but with the use of the interpreter, by not firing at civilians or firing through civilians, or keeping the overall agitation level of the street down, we're going to have a metric for that in the game. The GRS player, I'm assuming that's going to be Gianna, is going to be able to sort of keep the streets as cool as possible, and again, with the use of that interpreter that they had there, actually get some either hostile guys to be ambivalent, or some ambivalent guys to become friendly, or some friendly guys to stay friendly, because again, the militia are going to be part of that 3-state continuum that they're going to be able to shift between relatively easily. So the militia strength on the table is going to be highly fluid. So again, I've played with mob rules before. We had it a little bit with our Somali game last week. That's not that big a deal. What was kind of interesting to me was this whole idea of friendly, ambivalent, and hostile militia like all at the same time. So we're going to try and get some of that mechanic in this project. Okay, so I've gone ahead and cropped it. I went ahead and built like a little sliding gate there for our like almost like little sliding chain link fence things that you see across like junkyards or whatever, or auto mechanic places, even car rental places. And that is a 4th building. We'll probably do one more and then we'll go ahead and call it for the day, because we've been streaming for almost an hour now, and again, I don't want to get super again, it's Super Bowl Sunday, there's not going to be a huge audience today, and that's fine. Alright, so I got one more building here to do. Well, I've got probably 20 more buildings to do, but one more building for the stream. How about we do a building that actually has some actual battle damage? It's got like an RPG through the wall, or something actually blew up somewhere in the building and caused a problem. That will be fun, and let's go ahead and try that. How am I going to do that? First, let me clean up my little work area here, because it's out of control. Save my little asphalt piece. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and rename that layer. I will probably be reusing that at a later time. First rule of Photoshop, save everything, because you will reuse it later. Save everything and name your layers, no matter how anal retentive it sounds. Alright, let me get my wall brush going again. I know that my wall brush, or I have memorized now that my wall brush is 12 pixels wide. It's on my dual color brush, so these are the 2 colors I have on my palette. Hopefully that's showing. That's not really showing on your screens. Down here is where I have my two colors. So you can get very precise about how much your brush is going to alternate between these 2 layers, the pattern with which it's going to do it, how hard it's going to shift between those 2 patterns. In other words, how well defined or cloudy the borders between all these little color areas is going to be. You can get super serious about it. Usually I just pick out a couple things and until it looks the way I want, and then I save it with those attributes, and that way I can continue to build a bunch more elements that have sort of a uniform look to them, like walls, courtyards, buildings. Somehow my scrap here seems to be multiplying. Every time I turn around, there's more junk on my board. So just move this stuff aside for a moment. Okay. Let's build one more building here. You know what? So I stopped. What's the word here? Relying on previous work. I want my buildings to come out looking too similar. I'm just going to go ahead and erase everything and start from scratch. So D3R, hopefully I'm saying that right. I'm just gonna abbreviate that for now. Are you following our project over there on Sitrep Podcast? Obviously we're here on Twitch and Facebook. We're also on YouTube. Like I said, Facebook, on Tabletop. If not, you should check us out, because this 13 hours to 13 days project is gonna be a thing for quite a while. I think we're 36 hours in so far. I can't remember off the top of my head. Maybe Gaz can tell me what 13 days actually is at times 24 hours. It's like 300 and something hours. So we're not quite at 10% of our total time used, but it's starting to tick down, and we're really trying to. Damn it! Even with the ruler assistance, I'm still managing not to draw a straight line here. We're really trying to get this entire project up and running within 13 days of like man-hour work. So not like 13 days. Like, oh, I worked on it for 5 minutes today. That counts as a day. But like 13 days worth of man hours, I guess would be the best way to put it. Alright, so a very simple kind of a box structure. Now I'm going to go ahead and try and make this a little bit more interesting for my new building. Without making it too tedious. Oh, you know what we can do? We can have like an actual angled building. Let me, hold on. Except I have to kind of do this by hand. So, wish me luck. Here we go. That's not quite straight. It's a little bit smaller. Clean up this wall a little bit. Alright, that's not perfect, but you know what, it's fine. We're probably going to put a big RPG through that wall anyway, so it doesn't have to be too straight, right? Listening to G having a 20-minute monologue was funny. Oh, right, yeah. We had a there was an audio issue with that. Unfortunately, they did kind of fix it, but not until the podcast was kind of well underway. We did record a new one yesterday that should be out in the next week or so. That hopefully did come out a little bit better. Probably getting a little too convoluted with this building. subconsciously I know that I already said that this was kind of the last one for today's stream. So now I'm all like, let's get really fancy with it. Okay. I have a plan, sort of. Alright, let's open up a, right now there's no way into that lot, so let me go ahead and open up a small way that you can actually get in there, so it makes sense. Cool, and now this part is going to be our regular wall. I'm sorry, our regular roof. So let me find that roof layer that I hid earlier. Hopefully I did not delete it. Where's my roof? Please give me my roof. There we go. Fill in the little bits of roof I'm going to need. And then get rid of the roof I won't need. So for a normal miniature type table, like the time that we tried to approximate 28mm contact front on a virtual tabletop board, you can actually do that. It's not that hard. If you're willing to sort of, what's the word, accept certain, limitations. Like, obviously your terrain's not going to be really three-dimensional. You're going to have to, accept and approximate, certain things. You can, not only is it so much easier to build a table, which helps maybe with playtesting, specifically if you have say a game that you're not 100% sure yet whether or not you're going to like it or try it or whatever, you can play test it and, see if you like it. Without, spending a year on terrain and a year on, different stuff. You know what, I didn't use it? I haven't used up any of this. So how about we say this building is almost like 2 stories? Honestly, this game is going to take place all in the street, so I'm not that worried about, the building design affecting gameplay. Like, oh, this is a 2-story building, how do you show that? Where are the stairwells? If this is like a true urban, like assault game, you would need to actually have a lot of that figured out. Fortunately, that's not really what we're going for here. We're just trying to come up with like some interesting ideas and some interesting patterns for what's effectively going to be, obstacles. The streets are what's going to be the main part of it. The streets and the general status of the mob in the town, and the distance to get from point A to point B. Okay, so there's a basic building outline. Not entirely happy with this. And we'll fix that in a moment. But anyway, like I was saying, you're able to build a pretty sizable force pretty quickly. We had for our, sorry if that's popping in the mic there a little bit. We had for our, actually creating the guys for this game. Again, if you get cagey with your layers, like I am here with the buildings, and we like tutor for again, creating actual figures. Let me go ahead and see if I can find one of them at the moment. So here's a random guy. And I'm sure the scale's going to be a little bit off. Oh lord, yes, he's gigantic. Yeah, the scale's way off. Close that. But then, you can have a guy running around or whatever. For our guys, we had, I can't remember how many, like, well over 500, possibly 1,000 different combinations. Between 3 different kinds of hats, 2 different kind of beards, 3 different kinds of hair, different skin color, maybe 5 shirts, 4 or 5 kinds of pants, 3 weapons, 2 pair of shoes. You add all that together, you multiply it all together, you wind up with an absurd number of variations. Now, it was a little bit of work to set that up, but once it's set up, you could build an army of guys in like an afternoon with no problem. It's easy to build a table. Like, we've built pretty much a table's worth of buildings sitting here talking. I haven't even been streaming for a total hour yet. And then what we get is you can actually, play with players, no matter, like, I was playing with a guy in Shanghai literally last night. Skoback says the difference is the remote player controlling with the latency. This is very true. This is why we are switching over to Skype for these. Because the other player is going to have to pretty much, he's looking at the screen that you are, and he's just going to have to call out, hey, can you move my guy here? And you can either have a grid system, or you can have like a miniature with a ruler system. It would work mostly for, friendly games, as opposed to terribly, competitive games. But it does work. Again, Skoback's absolutely right. There are some limitations to it. But then again, I can play a miniature game with pretty much anybody whenever I want. I was playing a miniature game with Shanghai and Cleveland last night. You can't do that over a regular table. Tomorrow we might play again with a guy in Germany. We might play with a guy in Ireland. And you can create the table really, really, really fast. Especially once you have like a library of assets kind of built up. But to Skoback's point, no, he is right. There are eventually problems to it. I will confess that freely. Now, where do I want to put this RPG hole? I was going to use this, but oh, I'll use it on this side. Like here for this 13 days, so 13 hours project, we're going to have a game that's going to be simultaneously with Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Chicago, Illinois, and the UK. That without this kind of a solution, we would never be able to have. At least not without, a couple $1,000s of airfare, time off from work, and, months of planning. No thanks. Alright, so here's a wall. Obviously, there's a wall here. What I'm going to try and do now is blow a hole in this wall. I knocked a hole in it. Now I'm going to try and create some debris and wreckage around it. So. That said, no matter how much work you put into the Photoshop table, it will never obviously look as good as a real, well-made 28mm table, 10mm table, 50, any scale. It's always going to be lacking. Come on, where's this thing? I'm trying to get this debris layer to show up fully. There we go. Make that a little bit smaller. I'm just glad my Wacom pad is actually working today. I've had way too many problems with Wacom pads lately. The Wacom pad I have works fine. It just sometimes it doesn't play well with OBS. OBS likes to play with my print driver, and when that happens, it oh, it's not what I want. I'm trying to take a screen picture here. I'm going to want those numbers back in just a second is why I took a screen clip of it. Because for now, I'm going to make this black. Reduce my hardness to 0. I'm trying to put like a scorch mark or a blast. Okay, why aren't you working now? Oh, because I'm in eraser tool, like a retard. Not thinking today, guys. Sorry. Knocking down the opacity of my brush here so that it doesn't come out like completely black right off the top. It allows me to control the intensity and the depth of what's basically a scorch mark. So how's that? Where it looks like either a car or an IED or an RPG, something went through that wall and created a little bit of a commotion. A little bit of scatter terrain or dressing or whatever you want to call it. Actually, that's kind of blocking the gate there. Whoever runs this facility is not going to be happy. So I'll move that here so it's not really blocking the gate. Just because we haven't used this in a while. Do you want that under the walls? Is that under the walls now? Okay, cool. Alright. Maybe a little bit of something here and there. Just so that none of these outer surfaces of the building are completely uniform or fake looking, or they at least have a little bit of interesting traffic going on. Because your buildings for this kind of a table might be manufactured, but you don't want them to look manufactured. You want to be able to lie to people and say that you spent like hours and hours on every single building, individually handcrafting them. Even if they don't believe you, you want to be able to at least sort of, fake it. Fake it just a little, because why not? Alright. Again, leave myself plenty of elbow room for my crop. Oops. Save as building number 5. Okay, cool. We have 5 buildings so far. I have no idea how many buildings we're going to need, but it's probably going to be at least 10 or 15. I'll make 15 to be safe, and then we'll start chucking them on a map, and we'll see how many I wind up with. Cool. Thanks very much, Gaz. Sorry you got to take off. We're just about done anyway. We've been streaming here for about an hour and 10 minutes. We don't want to go too long. Again, I know that today is kind of a crazy day, but that's how you build some buildings super fast in hold on a second. I just realized that I put the wrong kind of surface on here. That surface is going to designate a roof, not a courtyard or like a ground level. So I'm going to replace it with this. Give me 2 seconds, everybody. It should be this. Oh, I said it was going to be a 2-story building. Oh, it's fine. It doesn't matter. There wouldn't be a dumpster here on the roof. This building sort of changed shape in the middle of its design, because I wasn't paying attention. You can hear my processor fan going there. This computer always gets cranky when you abuse the smudge tool, which I am totally doing. She'll cool off in just a second. Right now she's mad at me. Stop using the smudge tool so much. It really taxes the virtual memory. Okay. That's what I wanted. Now I gotta recrop and resave. That's no big deal. Thanks very much for coming out while you were here, guys. No worries. I know it's late, a lot later where you are. I'm actually kind of surprised anybody showed up with today being Super Bowl Sunday, but again, we want to make sure that we always hit, or at least as often as we conceivably can, whenever it's within our power. I mean, real life does happen, but whenever it's within our power, we do want to make sure that we do maintain our schedule here for the people who support us on Sitrep Podcast. Alright guys, so I'm going to go ahead and save my template. Again, I'll probably be using the same sort of a cheat mechanism here to build, a whole bunch more, layers, or a whole bunch more buildings. Thanks very much, D3R, for coming out. Thanks very much, Because Science Teacher. Thanks once again, Skoback. Again, thanks to everybody who came out. Again, we're going to be back with more of this 13 days to 13 hours project here. So again, we thank you very much for coming out and supporting us. Do keep following us as we continue to make more progress on our 13 days to 13 hours project here on Sitrep Podcast. For now, I'm going to go ahead and log off the stream. Again, I appreciate very much everyone who came out and then was supporting us. We'll be back later on this week with a podcast recording that we recorded yesterday. I think G's cleaning that up now. She's going to go ahead and send it out sometime in the coming week. And yeah, Gaz sometimes streams during the week. Again, for Sitrep, may or may not be related to 13 days to 13 hours. But right now, that's the big project we have on our plates. And you know, Gianna streams sometimes with Marty and other friends up in Chicago through on Thursday. So yeah, keep an eye on us, and we'll be back again sometime later on this week. For now, this is Oriskany. I am not going to go watch the Stupid Bowl or Super Bowl, whatever you call it, Skoback. No, I'm just kidding. If you guys enjoy it, great. If anything, I'm getting off before the show really starts. I think that game starts in like an hour and a half here, or 2.5 hours. But for now, I'm logging off. Thanks again, everybody, and take care. And I'll be in touch with everyone, you know, sometime during the week. Thanks again, everybody.
Are you looking to become a Tier 1 operator in the gaming world? Elevate your games with Black Sites